welcome back to my channel. This is Sacred Scars, Unbroken Spirit, and this is my life story. I am writing a book that will be available at a later date. Speaking of, progress is going really well with the book so far. In case anybody's interested in hearing how it's going, I anticipate publishing by sometime early next year. Now, ideally, it will be available in all formats, paperback, digital, as well as an audiobook, personally narrated by moi. Adding my own extra personal touch to something already so personal as it is, I really think that will take my ebook to the next level. And besides, it only makes sense to be the one narrating, verbalizing all the emotions that came with each experience. It just wouldn't be the same if done by anybody else, no doubt. As such, it goes without saying my excitement is vastly growing the deeper I dive into writing each chapter. I'm learning so much along the way, integrating new styles of writing that were once absolutely foreign to me. Let's just say I'm very pleasantly surprised with how well it's coming along. After a brief struggle with a bit of imposter syndrome, I was feeling very intimidated, comparing my own writing skill set as a novice to other novelists. However, I have since come to acknowledge that it is completely unrealistic to expect perfectionism as a first-time author. So comparing myself to others much more experienced than I was just absolutely not helping my mental space. They say comparison is the thief of joy, and I would agree. It very much is. With that said, I found it helpful for me personally to choose instead to remind myself that other novelists may have more experience or stronger writing skills, but in the grand scheme of things, all of that means absolutely nothing if one doesn't also have a $1 million story to bring to life, one that is going to captivate the readers through and through. And I do indeed feel I have that. So that being said, my worries are now fading away because I have complete confidence in the uniqueness of my memoir. I do believe it will be more than enough to overcompensate for the rest. So in today's video, we're going to switch gears a bit and go in a more positive direction since the last video was incredibly tragic. I'd like to spend some time highlighting one of the biggest breakthroughs of my entire life so far. Today's story merely outlines what it means to truly suffer physically in the most horrendous, unforgiving ways. To spend one's entire life searching for even just a crumb of relief, waking up every morning, head pounding, the excruciating pain overtaking me before barely even opening my eyes every morning. From that to miraculously healing this lifelong debilitating illness of over 20 years on my own after giving up on Western medicine. Let's start first with where it all began. Now, most of everyone I know has always been lucky enough to never have even experienced a migraine before in their entire life. So it's expected they couldn't possibly understand how something so common as a migraine or a headache is considered no big deal for some, and they get through it with ease. Whereas, on the other hand, it's nowhere near anything like that for me. Being not your average typical sick person, it's not like others who get a headache once in a while and can easily fix it with some Tylenol. No. My situation was nowhere near the same as the other normies out there. Being diagnosed with such a high severity case as mine, it often results in playing each day by ear. Every day is completely unpredictable. You can be fine 1 minute and the next minute you're spiraling, going down fast, 0 to 60 on a moment's notice, just straight downhill. In most situations, you're going to have a couple good days here and there, but for the most part, it was always safe to assume the rest would be bad pain days, and that was the case for me. Just about every day was a pain day for me. My migraines started becoming noticeable by the time I was about 12 years old. However, they were still fairly manageable at that point. One here, one there, nothing too terrible, and usually some Tylenol would fix it. But as I got a little bit older, it got much, much worse almost overnight. These types of migraines were called cluster migraines. And so, for those that who don't know, it's just like it sounds. Back-to-back migraines showing up in clusters. So instead of getting just one, you have several back-to-back, and it doesn't stop for days or even weeks on end. Initially, that's how it started, as cluster migraines, and then later into my 20s it eventually evolved into something a little bit less brutal, but still horrible to live with nonetheless. At 19 years old, I had finally gotten a diagnosis after suffering since I was about 16 with the cluster migraines. The doctor prescribed a preventative medication, and while it helped a little bit initially, it never actually stopped anything ever. I've tried just about every preventative treatment option under the sun, and none of it worked. I even went as far as getting a special ear piercing called a daith piercing, which goes through a certain pressure point in your ear, and supposedly it can help stop migraines for some people, but it's hit or miss, and it's about 50-50 whether it works or not. Unfortunately, it did not work for me, but I went into it with the prepared mentality of knowing that, hey, 50-50 chance if it's going to work. So my mindset was, basically, hey, push comes to shove, even if it doesn't work, I'll still, no harm, no foul, I'll still walk out with a really cool piercing, and that'll be that. Having tried literally everything available on the market to treat migraines, everything except Botox. That's the one thing I absolutely refuse, because 30 shots in the face, Unfortunately, nothing was able to fully stop these horrible daily migraines that over-the-counter meds didn't even touch. Every single day was a battle over what combination of medications to rotate, what to try first, what to do if the first round of medication didn't work, etc., etc. I used to spend my days literally just counting down until the migraine would hopefully be over. In my early 30s, they came out with a monthly injection that goes in your thigh. It's made from some kind of special antibodies that they pull from stem cells, and as such, it was a very, very expensive shot. Thankfully, my insurance covered the $800 cost, but even still, this shot was my worst nightmare because I am a huge needle phobe. And to make matters worse, it was an auto injector, so it would shove the medicine through way too fast. It was so incredibly painful, sometimes to the point of like screaming. I would just be unable to contain myself. The shooting pain was just so excruciatingly just unbearable. With the combination of several therapeutic treatment modalities, including but not limited to a once daily preventative medication, a monthly thigh injection, several rescue medications such as triptans or narcotic painkillers sometimes as a last resort, as well as separate treatment under doctor's supervision utilizing state legalized medical marijuana. It took all of that to finally get somewhat of a grip on my migraines to where they were at least manageable. 20 years of trial and error, that combination of medication therapies brought me down to a fairly stable baseline. I went from 25 pain days every month down to probably 5 or so bad ones a month, yet still was grappling with regular daily ones, although those were like much less intense than the cluster migraines before. Even so, it was still agonizing as they would still come and go consistently throughout each day. It wasn't by any means perfect, but by far the best grip on the pain I've been able to get in over 20 years of trying desperately to find a solid, permanent solution. It was the best I was able to do with Western medicine, having exhausted all the other options. And yet, even still, it wasn't enough. I never was able to truly find 100% relief from the 20-ish years of medication management, unfortunately. Aside from the pain itself, one of the biggest challenges I was constantly faced with when it came to battling this chronic condition was getting the people around me to understand my struggle whilst having never stepped foot in my shoes. Now, I'm usually not one to whine or complain very much when in pain. This was simply a courtesy to others around me because, let's be real, nobody wants to listen to constant complaining 24/7, whining about having yet another headache today after having one also yesterday, as well as the day before, etc., etc. It doesn't matter how horrible the pain is, eventually you come to learn that after so long of navigating this complex condition around others, they eventually become jaded and less caring about the struggle or pain levels over time as time goes on. It's always different in the beginning, of course, but there's less of a sense of urgency to help and instead just quiet apathy. It indirectly becomes a burden to those around us. So I tend to bottle it up and suffer in silence. Well, I guess I speak on behalf of all those in the chronic illness community. However, this did not stop my family from calling me lazy, often whenever I'm stuck in bed for days, trying to manage my pain after being unable to find relief with medications. What they didn't understand was that this condition is completely debilitating. It isn't something that'll just pass. It's a constant, everyday battle, and even if we have a seemingly normal day where we look fine on the outside, that does not mean that we actually are. We're just choosing not to be annoying by complaining about it. People seem to forget that. But internally, we are still in pain, fighting tooth and nail, head splitting, sensitive to bright lights, loud noises. Sometimes it would get so bad the whole entire side of my face would be throbbing whilst also half numb. And then there was the nausea. At the very worst, the pain would get so bad it would have me throwing up for hours. But somehow I was just being lazy, according to my family. Go figure. Additionally, it wasn't just my family. I've also had to constantly fight to be seen and heard with my close circle too. I've had friends and even boyfriends that seem to forget what my body struggles with on a daily basis just because I look fine on the outside. Likewise, they would automatically assume I was fine and had a grip on it simply because it was a common everyday thing. It was so incredibly infuriating having my condition constantly minimized, brushed off, or disregarded. Their mentality being that I was fine and could handle it just because it happens all the time or because it's an everyday occurrence. What they didn't understand or refuse to acknowledge was that just because it happens every day doesn't make it suck any less. Each day was very much unpredictable. Like I said, one minute I could be perfectly fine, the next minute I'm going downhill like real fast, and it's over from there. And then we have to alter plans for the day. What outsiders looking in don't understand is that pain and chronic illness severely affects our quality of life. So much so that even the strongest, most resilient fighters of them all, it doesn't matter how tough any of us are, we all still succumb every once in a while. It just gets to the point where we truly can't take it anymore. Having to fight for just a normal quality of life, an ounce of joy. One can only fight the pain, fight our bodies, fight our thoughts, fight the doctors, fight our families, not treat us like some kind of lazy bum or a burden, as if the pain itself was not exhausting enough. All those other external factors are usually the straw that breaks the camel's back. We don't get to live normal lives and do normal things. We spend every waking day, every hour, just wishing with every ounce of our being to have one day with no pain. To have just one day and not spend the entirety of it coordinating what method or tricks I'm going to have to pull out of my sleeve just to try to get a little tiny bit of relief, even though I know it's hit or miss whether it even works or not, and more than likely it's probably not going to work. But we still try anyways because we're desperate. What else are we going to do? The battle is truly, truly draining, completely sucking the life out of us. I can remember a time when it got so bad. There have been only 2, maybe 3 moments like this in my entire life where I was truly ready to give up and let go. Not because I wanted to, but because the pain and the low quality of life from the daily battle was becoming unbearable. Mentally, physically, fighting day in and day out for relief, yet never finding it. You eventually reach a point of hopelessness, feeling like there's no end in sight. And as such, you begin to start losing the will to live. Not because you're ready to check out, but simply because you just don't have any more fight left within you after so many years going non-stop. That is why it is so, so, so important to never ever take your health for granted. Because once you lose it and aren't able to function like you used to, or even as a normal human being anymore, it affects you mentally in a very severe way. Now, there were triggers to the migraines, so sometimes I would be able to tell if I was going to be in pain ahead of it actually coming on. Firstly, certain foods could trigger a migraine. Usually foods high in preservatives or processed foods. Foods with MSG like Chinese food, or foods that were high in salt like potato chips, the sulfites in wine or alcohol. Also, whenever the weather would change, rain or the seasons changing, whenever the barometric pressure in the air would change, that would also trigger a migraine. It was not uncommon for me to be stuck in bed day in and day out during hurricane season or winter coming on. It's also important to mention that a migraine can last up to 72 hours. That's 3 days of absolute hell. Most people are able to get rid of their migraines within the same day, but I unfortunately was often one of the unlucky ones that would have it on one side of my head for the full 3 days, then it would switch to the other side of my head 3 more days, going back and forth, back and forth. At worst, this would continue on lasting up to 2 to 3 weeks straight, every single day. Just absolute hell. I wouldn't wish this on my worst enemy. So instead of accepting this miserable torment of existence as my fate, I decided I was going to turn my pain into power, take back my life, and find a solution. A permanent one. No matter what it cost me, no matter what I had to do, I was ready for this challenge and for whatever it had in store. It was at that moment that I vowed that I was going to heal myself from this illness that was very slowly sucking the life out of me. As each day passed, I continued pushing forward, and it also progressively got worse. Another day, another battle, another step closer to the edge. Very much on the verge of starting to lose hope completely. There seemingly was no end in sight after exhausting all treatment options on the market to no avail. It truly came down to giving myself an ultimatum. Either I swallow my pride and accept defeat, giving up altogether. No, that was too easy. Or I find another way, looking toward the most unconventional of methods. No matter how wooey, desperate times called for desperate measures, and I was absolutely willing to explore anything. I had come to terms with the fact that I was at a point of severe desperation, and so I asked myself, how bad do you want it to get better? How bad do you want it? And how far are you willing to go? And I joked with myself, are you willing to go meet God to go get relief? Now, stick with me. This is not what you think. I'm joking, but I'm also not. So, without any hesitation at all, the answer was immediately yes. I was ready to go meet God, all right. Just not in the way you're thinking. You see, this was at the time in my life when I had been introduced to the concept of astral projection. If you know, you know. I was absolutely intrigued, not just by the phenomenon, but more so the mere thought of all the possibilities, the things I could potentially accomplish and heal on the other side based off of other people's stories that could already do it. Some of the things I had heard people were able to do, that was it. I had made up my mind that that was the answer. And even if it wasn't, it was at least the first step, a step in the right direction to hopefully getting answers and really trying to figure this out. My brain had fantasized with so many different ideas and things I wanted to try once I got out of body, whether it be diving into a healing pool or perhaps having an astral being work on me, take me to one of those med beds we've all been hearing about, even astral surgery, anything. It didn't matter what the modality. I couldn't care less about the how. The point I was at mentally, my desperation was so strong. Absolutely nothing could stop me from coming out of this cured. There was no fear, nothing I was not willing to attempt, no challenge I couldn't overcome. Failure was absolutely not an option. Now, in hindsight, if you think about it, if one gets to this mental state of, dare I say, borderline psychosis, that I was literally ready to go meet God in order to get better, jokes or not, it definitely does speak volumes about the severity of the entire situation at hand. In retrospect, it wasn't entirely all in my head, just making up a bunch of crazy scenarios that were going to magically cure me. No. Hear me out. I mean, of course, there's always a method to the madness. However, my claims were also never just unfounded. There are many spiritual healers and teachers out there who have written books on the subject and are very knowledgeable on how to heal in the astral realm. Our human vessels are so much stronger than we actually give it credit for. And these people have witnessed firsthand, either through their own healing or the healing of others, that we can do it ourselves without having a bunch of pills shoved in our faces. We've always been told that the placebo effect is not something to trust, or that we should just dismiss it because it's not a good thing, according to the pharmaceutical industry. We are taught this at a very young age. But the truth of the matter is the placebo effect is real, and it works. That's exactly how we do it. It's literally just a matter of a very strong belief and focus. And some lifestyle changes too, of course. It's incredible once you begin to understand quantum healing and how the subconscious can perform these miraculous healings on people. Just like when you hear about certain people having stage 4 cancer, for example, and then they go back for a scan and the tumors are magically gone. This is the magic of quantum healing. I felt deep in my heart of hearts that I just knew deep down inside that I could be just like them. If they could be healed, why not me? I knew it was possible, very rare, but that just meant you had to figure out the logistics, what to do, and of course, like I said, make some lifestyle changes. I knew it would be a challenge, but it definitely was something I was up for in order to finally end my suffering. Now that we've covered the physical, mental, and everything else in between when it comes to a day in the life of a chronic migraine sufferer, let's revisit and just expand a little bit on the concept earlier we touched on about how emotional baggage is what actually manifests into physical disease. There's a saying that goes, the body keeps the score. And it is so true. I believe it's also the name of a book. I don't know the author, but I think it's a book also. Unfortunately, I was never able to accomplish learning how to astral project. It is not easy, but I am still practicing and I will get there one day. But yeah, at least not yet. So I had to look into other modalities. And thus began my journey diving into books and soaking up all the information I could possibly learn about how our traumas and unhealed wounds stay trapped in our bodies, eventually manifesting into physical disease. As mentioned in prior videos, my migraines are hereditary, passed down through my lineage, as my mother and my own son both suffer from them also. But epigenetics are only one piece of understanding truly why this is happening. But it does give us a big clue, that the reason we have them is all tied to pretty much the same unhealed traumas carried over also from past lives. This means that for me personally, my lineage, we're all working on overcoming the same thing, the same lesson. Each of us attempting over and over from lifetime to lifetime, unsuccessfully in the past, breaking the pattern so it carries on into our next life. The trapped energetic trauma or emotional baggage stays with us and it festers inside of us until we learn how to clear it. Because we have not fully healed that emotional baggage, we're instead still holding on to it, and this is why we end up being born into a life with such debilitating illnesses. We incarnate with the hope of finally healing ourselves once and for all this time around. Now, my mother, unfortunately, was not able to work through her traumas nor heal them in this life, but I, as the generational curse breaker in my family, I have decided with great conviction about 5 years ago, I vowed that I would figure out how to heal these migraines on my own, no matter what. And then once I was able to do it for myself, I would then proceed to heal my son too. The healing of my migraines was nothing short of miraculous, and I'd like to share my knowledge that I've gained along the way and show you how I was able to heal myself and to heal the miracle within. That's actually one of the running themes in my book, and today's story is just that. One of the many ways that I've been working so very, very hard to be that living testimony of walking proof of what actually is possible. We truly can heal ourselves. It absolutely can be done through our own willpower. For me personally, it actually fueled my fire even more. Having spent so many years of my life being failed by the medical system, I was absolutely through with Western medicine, and I was ready to try doing something different, myself, taking matters into my own hands. Our society has programmed us to believe we always need a pharmaceutical pill if we're sick, and the system has made us completely codependent. Everyone except for the select few who decide to go against the grain, the black sheep, the awakened ones, those who choose to take a chance on an alternative form of healing through energetic and quantum healing modalities. There was absolutely no scientific proof that it even worked, but I had an overwhelming sense of optimism and faith that if something like this had worked for other people, why couldn't it work for me too? Now, granted, yes, it is very rare, but there have been many instances where people have gone from stage 4 cancer to absolutely no tumors, complete full recovery. And they didn't have surgery or chemotherapy. They healed their own bodies through one of the there's many different ways to do this. I'm just gonna list, a few. It's absolutely possible. It's just a matter of figuring out the science behind these alternative methods that, ironically, science has not even caught up to. At the end of the day, it was definitely worth a shot reading up on some books and researching how others were able to heal their own illnesses as well. I remember the very first book I read, it was by an author named Louise Hayes. Her book was called You Can Heal Your Body. Simple as that. I must have been about 15 or 16 years old when I picked it up. At first, I struggled to conceptualize how simple the process was as she explained it. Truth be told, I was so used to suffering every single day and fighting so incredibly hard nonstop, day in and day out, looking for the next thing to try to get relief and trying to predict whether the medication would work or not. Compared to all the things I had tried before, her method was literally a cakewalk. Moreover, what made my doubt even stronger was my own toxic belief that it sounded too good to be true if there wasn't a struggle. I didn't know how to live without struggling. That was a foreign concept to me, sadly. With further research delving into other types of healing modalities, quantum healing, frequency, meditation, QHHT, hypnosis, that sort of thing. The latest book that I picked up and still use to this day is called The Secret Language of Your Body by Ina Segal. It goes for about 14 or 15 bucks on Amazon, and I'm telling you, it is worth every penny. This book lists every single disease you can possibly think of, as well as the emotional trauma or wounds tied to that disease. And then finally, it shows the different remedies for releasing the blockages from said emotional baggage. Think somatic techniques, somatic healing, things like that. According to the book, my migraines were tied to my power being taken from me, being controlled, having weak boundaries, extreme people pleasing, having difficulty saying no. So I spent many, many years working on myself, learning to set stronger boundaries, learning to say no when I really meant no. I stopped people pleasing unapologetically, no matter, even if I pissed people off or made people mad. I chose me and took my power back and put myself first. I worked really, really hard for many, many years to overcome those wounds and the emotional baggage that came with it. I took my time filling out all the residual feelings tied to each trauma, each emotional wound, each unhealthy blockage feeling, and fully experiencing it, fully feeling it out, and then releasing it. I would write it down, set the intention to release it, let it go, and I would burn it in a candle flame. Once all was said and done, it was last year, January 2025, I decided one day to take the risk of going off my medications for my migraines just to check my progress, see if it worked. And much to my surprise, it worked. I went off my shot, my preventative medications, my rescue, the triptans, the narcotic, everything. All of it, cold turkey. It had actually worked. My migraines were completely gone. I couldn't believe it at first. I cried for days. I was in such a state of awe. Because I did not know how to live without suffering. Again, as I mentioned earlier, and this has been life-changing in more ways than I can count. I feel like a walking miracle after having been through so much hardship, 20 plus years of suffering, begging every single day to find relief, and looking back at how far I've come, miraculous is an understatement. So my hope by creating this video is to inspire others out there who are struggling with physically debilitating ailments. I hope to be a testimony of inspiration so that you out there as well may feel inspired to take the initiative to heal yourself as well. It's definitely possible if one is willing to put in the work. It's hard, it's not easy, I will give you that, but it is so incredibly worth it. You know, all the blood, sweat, and tears. It's worth it's words can't express how worth it and life-changing the results are. So that about wraps it up for today's video. I want to thank you for your support in watching today's video. I really hope you enjoyed it and learned something and got something out of it, something valuable. Please be sure to subscribe to my channel if you haven't already so that you never miss another crazy story. Also, be sure to like this video if you enjoyed it and hit the notification bell so that you get alerted anytime whenever I upload my next story. Again, the book is called The Secret Language of Our Body. The author is Ina Segal. And again, it runs for about 15 bucks on Amazon. You can even get it for cheaper, like 10 bucks if you buy it used, and it is worth every penny. Thank you again, and I will see you all in the next one. Bye.